right. Stephen, I believe it's your turn now.
Okay, well, I'm going to be reading from Cloning Freedom. And just a little setup. The lead characters, Ryan and Rowan, are escaping from the Set region, which Rowan is a clone and she's effectively been used as a slave to make entertainments. Full VR plus emotion. And up until recently, she didn't know that she wasn't in the 21st century, early 21st century. They had to take refuge due to a vehicle malfunction with one of Ryan's old army buddies, Kadar, who happens to be a terminally ill because due to an arbitrary age line for using cloning as a medical treatment, they wouldn't treat him for the injuries he took in a campaign that was vital to the human condition. Um, and Ryan has joined him in the penal facility that he's in, and they've had to dump their vehicle, and Ryan and Rowan have gone off, and that's where it's going to pick up. Kadar sat alone in the ATV cockpit. He watched a handheld as pictures paraded across the screen. A middle-aged Ryan with a fully functional Henry and himself standing in front of the Swampla Capitol building. Another image, him and Katoy in a feline-zoid green space on the switchboard station. It has been a good life. He checked the time. 1800. They are taking their time to find me. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Dee! Sounded in the cabin. Kadar's eyes jerked open. Finally. His voice was a little more than a whisper. I'm glad they threw Victor's tripwire. It will make it all much safer. Arlene watched the feeds from inside the ATV and the satellite downlink. What I wouldn't give for an empathic download on Kadar, she muttered. Rowan and Ryan were delegated to a side screen where they waited impatiently in a maglev terminal to catch the connecting train. The satellite showed Chow's troops stalking up to a low grassy hill. This is so much easier when you can manipulate the characters, griped Darlene. Mildred watched the troops approach the mound of dirt that bisected an intersection of the access tracks. My handheld has the sonar attachment, and it says that mound is hollow, stated Chow. Big surprise. I will hand it to them. From satellite, you wouldn't think anything of this. Mildred examined a magnification of the mound's surface on her handheld. Do you think they'll be in there? Chow checked his troop's location. Then a thought crossed his mind. Stardust! Tapping the screen on his handheld, he changed its mode. What? Asked Mildred. Tripwires. If I was hunkered down like... Chow never finished his sentence. Kadar pulled himself forward on his seat and tapped the screen of his handheld, bringing up a set of instructions. Grav lifts on. He threw the switch connected to the wire that Victor had given him. Activate all grav nullifiers. He threw a set of switches on the console. The smell of hot circuits filled the cabin, and an unhealthy humming sound assailed his ears. Arlene watched via satellite as the battered ATV shuddered into the air like some grotesque blimp. Soil and bits of sod clung to it as the troops ran for cover. Go, you crazy old pervert! Go! Arlene was bouncing at her seat. The unhealthy hum of malfunctioning grav nullifiers made speech impossible. Chow and Mildred watched the ATV climb into the air, like the remains of some horrid beast of legend, risen from its moldering grave. Its hull was fractured in so many places it looked like scales. The front end was nothing but shattered polycarbonate. The broken machine lurched, leaning dangerously to one side. A new whine joined the hum of the grab nullifiers, and it blasted forward. Still deafened by the noise, Mildred activated her handheld and made a one-sided call. Satellite tracking. Follow an illegal ATV leaving Williamsville Penitentiary. Kadar gritted his teeth against the noise. Everything was shaking around him. It took all his remaining strength to wrestle the control wheel so that he flew in a straight line. The compass on his secondary screen had 2 red lines drawn on its face, and he kept the needle between them. The wind turbines were screaming, and the numbers on his power gauge were scrolling down. "We have them!" shouted Mildred. "They won't get far without camouflage," agreed Chow in a parade yard bellow. "Let's get back to the vehicles. I want to question this Johnny myself." Mildred started down the access road. Chow turned to his troops, who were brushing dirt and sawed off themselves. "Company, assemble!" he bellowed. Several of them seemed not to notice. "Company, assemble!" he called again. Rodriguez looked at the lieutenant, touched his ears, and shook his head. Stardust. Chow went to collect his people. Kadar hung on. The strain of steering the ATV was draining him, but he hadn't felt this alive in years. He looked at the front viewer. Blue sky stretched before him in an endless panorama. He checked an auxiliary screen that showed the terrain below was barren and rocky. He glanced at the timer on his handheld. The flight had lasted less than 10 minutes. The ATV pitched nose down and started to lose altitude. Stardust, the grav lifts. Kadar cut the power to the turbines, allowing his momentum to carry him forward. The main screen filled with green, then blue. Lake Doig, you are a beautiful sight. Arlene recorded everything with the hidden cameras in the ATV. Kadar was shaking like a leaf and seemed to be unaware of the blood that dripped from his nose. Mildred looked up as a civil air defense unit rocketed overhead. The 5 sleek atmospheric assault aircraft glinted in the sun as they accelerated towards their target. Kadar watched as the atmospheric assault aircraft overshot him. Their wing lights flashed a warning, which he ignored. The jets turned, and as they approached, a missile sped away from the lead aircraft. The ATV jerked with an impact. The smell of burning circuits became worse. Kadar started to lose altitude at a faster pace. Let me get a little further. A few more seconds. He stared at the power meter, which read 2%, then at his forward screen, which now showed blue waves with white caps. He nodded. Picking up his handheld, he pressed a button. "Hello, SETE head office," said a pleasant female voice. "For that which is most human and high in all of us, freedom, equality, love, in service to true humanity." The ATV jerked with another impact. Kadar smiled. "For the love of Rowan, sod you!" Reaching forward, he threw the switch that activated his turbines, then killed his grab nullifiers. Divine be with him. Arlene watched the satellite feed, which showed the ATV plummeting towards the lake. The internal feed showed Kadar, eyes closed and smiling. There was a jumble of light, and the internal feed cut out. The satellite showed a plume of water rocketing into the air, then settling in a shower of rain. A small, quiet part of Arlene's mind noted how pretty the falling water was. It resembled a billion airborne diamonds, each to reflect the facet of a life now gone. And I think I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much. That is again from Cloning Freedom. It came out last December, so available now. And book 2 of the series, Freedom's Law, is coming this December. And I think we'll wrap it up with Dale. Is Dale still with us?
Yes, I'm still here.
Excellent. Yeah, so go ahead if you want to give us your reading.
Okay. I'm going to read a section from my 3rd book, unless Catherine stops me. Actually, it's one of my favorite. It's not a big part, but it's one of my favorite parts because I always imagine George Takei doing the lead role part. Um, as weird as that might be, but anyway, third book, the aliens come back from the first book 160 years later. Um, the humans that have determined to make a resistance have built some transparent dome cities to try to resist the return of the aliens, and they have just found out what the aliens were looking for in the first place. And unlike in the first book, where the aliens kind of took volunteers to take with them, this time they're a little more determined who they're going to take. So they stop off first in America, but then they start visiting other places. This takes place basically just in Tokyo. It says, the hour passed slow and faster than any hour in Earth's history. The Iji stood watching a wall display tracking the progress of the ship. That's the alien ship. A double-digit numeric counter next to Tokyo showed the probability of Tokyo being the destination continued to rise until it was 99 and held there. As it did, he eyed the display and walked from the room, a horde following him. As he entered a transport in the city tube system, the one that waited for him at all times, the horde followed into other transports. Not all made it. Dome edge, Iji said when the doors had closed. Smoothly accelerating, the small vehicle made a direct line for the dome surrounding the city. Viewing platform, Iji. The platform was restricted. The government didn't need a crowd of tourists or someone doing something stupid at the platform. It was one of only three existed. The others were larger to accommodate crowds of dignitaries. He traveled, held 3 people comfortably, and was the private venue of the chairman. It was not used often. When the transport stopped and Iji stepped into the small balcony on the inside of the dome, he was not surprised to find Mr. Smith waiting there for him in a firm but relaxed stance. Smith did not look happy. Are you going to advise me not to go outside? Iji asked. I don't think I need to, Smith answered. I will not hide behind a dome. One must face their enemy, and I will be no exception. As he walked, his hands went to the sides of his head and removed the device from the top of his ears. Now you have me concerned, Smith voiced. Let our enemy know as little as possible, Iji replied, handing the devices to Smith. That would seem to be the opposite of what you are doing. He held the devices in his open palm as if ready for Iji to change his mind. Let them try to read my mind. Raising his chin, Iji continued to the door and embedded in the dome. A military guard opened the door as he approached and closed it after he had exited. Alone, Iji turned in the direction the alien ship approached. Thousands of people watched from much less advantageous points as the alien ship slowed over the mountain, causing a wave of clouds to disperse ahead and to the side. The wave rolled over the countryside as if a statement, thin by the time it reached Tokyo. Iji let the watch condense and stay on his face, dripping as it may. It was several minutes before the ship moved again, this time towards Tokyo, at an apparent slow pace. Stiff as a statue, Iji waited. When the ship was close enough to be imposing, it stopped. From the top, one figure exited and made its way to Iji. It had only one face and no obvious weapon. There was no sound or motion of wings as the messenger flew, and it stopped and stood effortlessly as if on the air itself 3 meters before him. We have come for those who are ours. The words appeared to come from the messenger, his lips moving while they sounded. Anyone outside of the domed city you can have. Those inside are ours. Iji glared at the messenger, still as stone. Time passed. You would attack us if we attempted to enter, the messenger said without emotion. Yes, an equally emotionless replied. Why? We are not your slaves. We are not your property. We are intelligent beings in charge of our own lives. If there are those who wish to go with you, so be it. But we wish only to be left alone by you to live as we desire. And yet you do not apply that equally to all who live here. The insight of the statement caused Iyajai to consider. Feeling nothing, he shook off the feeling. Not everyone's desires can be accommodated. There are too many and conflicting desires. We do as well as we can. Some people's desires are more important than others. The blatant statement was made without accusation. True, Iyajai said, staying stoic. Are yours most important? Not necessarily. The messenger stood before Iyajai, motionless for several minutes. The wind did not even ruffle its robes. Iyajai replied in kind, as if content. Those inside held their breath. Outside, the lack of sounds made it seem that nature did too, waiting for the messenger to speak in. Finally, it did. We could force you to do what we want. Control my mind? Iyajai scoffed. In my veins runs royal blood. I fought twice as hard to attain my position because of those who oppose me because of that blood. No one or nothing stands in my way. If you wish to try to control me, go ahead. I am no weak-minded fool to be your servant. Again, the messenger stared. Minutes went by with Iyajai feeling nothing. Those inside waited without motion also, including the snipers on the snipers focused on the messenger and Iyajai. The wind whistled as if to start a conversation, but all ignored it. The messenger broke the silence. For now, we will look for ours outside of your cities. For now. Turning, the messenger left much faster than it had arrived. Iyajai felt no effect in the wind of its leaving. When it was out of sight, he turned and re-entered the dome. Smith handed him the earpieces, a questioning look on his face. For now, they will leave us alone. Iyajai put the earpieces on. Give your allies a full recording of the event. There was no audio of the messenger. Iyajai's head nodded. I am not surprised. Send me the recording. I will add what they said. Yes, Chairman.
Thank you.
And that is the end of that segment.
So that is from Rebel Earth, Book 3, the final book of the Awakening Earth trilogy, coming in January. And you know what? Now, every time I read that book, I am going to picture George Takei as AD, because, yes, now that I'm envisioning it, that is perfect for him.